All right, well, I am so excited to be joined on Confetti Cannon with Brandon Janous. Brandon, so glad to have you here with me today.
Yeah, thank you. I am honored and thrilled to be here, Grace. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So, just a little recap. Brandon and I got connected at the Oaks, which is a retreat center. Well, we went for a writer's workshop. It was amazing. But I still think, Brandon, like one of my favorite parts of that entire experience was truly the people that we got connected with.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Like I love Bob Goff and I love Kim and I love the speakers and the talent and Taylor and everybody that was there, but the relationships you build at the campfire, the relationships you build at dinner, the relationship you build, around the table, at the most random times, that's what makes these retreats so dang special. And you were one of those relationships. So I'm so glad I got to meet you there.
Let's talk a little bit. When we were at the retreat, I got to get just a little glimpse of your book, which I have here with me, but also hear a little bit about your story. I would love to unpack that here. It was something that I took away with me as one of the most memorable parts of the retreat, watching you on the other side of something incredibly difficult
Mm.
and unimaginable, living life well and fully. Would you mind just talking a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. So, my wife Rachel passed away March 1st, 2020, after a couple year battle with breast cancer. And she was 38 years old. So young and healthy and did everything right. And cancer doesn't discriminate. And so, it came in actually April 17th, yesterday, we got diagnosed 2018, April 17th, 2018. She had beat it. We got rid of the cancer for a minute. But then it came back into her bones and her spine and eventually her brain, and then just kind of took over her body. So we had, a season of life where we knew she wasn't going to make it, barring a miracle. The doctors had kind of given up, and there was no more medically speaking, there was nothing more they could do. And that was a season that could have been really ugly. But just because of the way Rachel lived and the way Rachel loved and the impact she had on so many people, it became just a beautiful season of healing, of hope for others. We spent the last 39 nights of her life in the hospital, and people came from all over the world to say bye to Rachel, and they left ministered to. If you knew Jesus, you knew him more when you left. If you didn't know Jesus, you were going to know him when you left. And Rachel's whole thing was she knew she was dying, and she was just going to give, as much of Jesus as she could in her final days. And her challenge to all of us is we're all one step closer. We're all one day closer to our eternal life. And we should all be, sharing the good news and the hope with people whenever we get the chance to. So, what Rachel left behind was myself and three little ones. And so, we are doing life the best we can. We are struggling through it. We are failing through it. But we're doing it. And Rachel prepared us the best she could for, the season of life without her. And we are happy and we are thriving, and it's okay to be okay. It took me a minute to realize that, but that's all Rachel wanted, was for us to to live, because life is so dang short, and we're not promised another day. And it's so cliche to say, but being a part of this community, I'm seeing that over and over again as people are losing people. And before we started recording, Grace and I were talking about people that are losing people all around us, and just that we can't take that for granted, and we need to live life the best we can while we're here.
How do you anticipate loss? Because it's not like something that
Mm,
randomly happens or all of a sudden, an instant deal. It was something that you knew of for a good
yeah.
bit of time, and you had to wrap your minds around the slowness of anticipating what was about to happen. How
Yeah,
did
gosh.
you manage that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that question. That's a really good question. Probably terribly. I probably managed it terribly. I I didn't um grasp finality. I didn't grasp that she was really not going to be home. I knew, like, medically speaking, we were done. We continued to pray, we continued to hope. Um, until about 5 days before she died, when she was pretty out of it. And during the stay in the hospital, one of the first nights we were there, she had a bunch of seizures, and I thought we were going to lose her that night. I'd never seen anyone have a seizure, and I was the only one in the room. Me and my sister-in-law were no, it was just me in the room the first time it happened, and I thought I was about to lose Rachel right there. And the next time it was me and my sister-in-law, and then this happened all night long, and we thought we were going to lose her. And one of them wouldn't stop. And I remember the doctor coming in and saying, "Hey, I can stop this, but she will probably not wake up. What would you like me to do?" And watching her seize was the most uncomfortable feeling because it looked painful. It looked like she was hurting. And so I made the call to say, yes, can you please stop this? Right. Really hard decision. So he did. He gave her enough medicine to stop the seizures. And so everyone from our town came in to say goodbye to her, all the things. There were probably like 10, 15 people in the room. And out of nowhere, Rachel woke up and said, "Gosh, I gotta pee." And we're like, "Are you stinking kidding me? Like, this was not supposed to be how it was." And so, like, this happened over and over and over again, where like we thought we were saying bye, and she would pop up and like tell a joke or say something silly or whatever. And so, like, we kind of got to the point where like, I don't know that she's ever gonna be gone, right? And like it was a joke, but it was also like she should not be here anymore. She physically should not be here anymore. Um, but then it got to the towards the end, and I didn't know that, but people that had been there before had seen like this is kind of how it looks. And my pastor was one of those guys, and one of the final days he had visited, I'm walking him down the lobby, and he said, "Hey man, I just need you to know that it's okay to be relieved when this is over." And I remember thinking, man, you're not allowed to say that, relieved that Rachel dies. No, that's not a feeling I'm gonna have until it happened, and I was, because there was no more pain, and there was no more uncertainty, and there was no more doctor's appointments, and there was no more not being dad. I wasn't home for 39 nights. I got to go home and be dad. I got to go home and start life, without Rach. But I remember a huge sense of relief that it was over, and then I'm like, oh, now I have to go figure this out. Um, but a little thing called COVID happened. 13 days after Rachel died, the whole country shut down. No more school, no more church, no more everything. And people I know would think, well, man, that had to be even worse. But none of us knew what to do. Like we were all in that together. And so like it almost gave me all the grace in the world to suck at this, to not know what I'm doing, right? Because you didn't know either. And my neighbor didn't know, and nobody knew what we were doing. And so we were all doing it together. And so like I hate that COVID happened. It will have a lasting impact on so many people, and we lost people. But at the same time, for us in our season, there was a blessing in it that we got to just like figure it out together, right? Like we had our little bubble of people, and we just figured it out. And did I do it great? No. Am I still trying to figure things out? I got teenage girls, things are happening, having conversations, and I'm failing miserably, but I'm showing up. I'm showing up the best I can. And to your question, Rachel did a really good job preparing people around us to show up and almost threatening them. Like, hey, I need you to do this because Brandon will forget to do this. And I need you to do this because Brandon doesn't do this. And so girls' haircuts, dentist appointments, things that I didn't do, Rachel had already put into motion. And still to this day, people are showing up in my life to do things that I would have forgot, or that I didn't do, or that I wasn't good at. But all that to say, COVID kind of allowed us to walk through something together as a whole, right? So it wasn't just me, it was all of us trying to figure life out. And so all my failures didn't look so bad because everybody else was failing at the same time.
How did you manage to process such a huge loss of your own while all of a sudden being kind of stuck in a household
Yeah,
with all your kids and in COVID? Because I know grieving, it looks different for everyone, and I think it's completely, random and not linear. But how did you do that? Like, what did grief look like
yeah.
for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So even though we never really wanted to give up, we had conversations. So before Rachel was kind of incoherent, we had a lot of conversations in that hospital room. Even before then, we she gave me permission to love again. She gave me permission to work less. That was a big thing in our relationship and in our marriage is I worked too much, and she that bothered her. She wanted me to be present. She wanted me to be home. She wanted me to be dad and husband. It wasn't about making all the money or doing all the things. It was about like I want you to be here. And so like she gave me these 8 things, and it's in my book, things that she needed from me. And it was, take care of myself. Like I can't eat tacos and chicken fingers and soft pretzels the rest of my life. I need to be around. It's take care of the babies and love them well and show up for them and be there with my whole face. That was Rachel's big thing. It wasn't just act like you're there with your head in your phone like many of us can do. It's be there with your whole face because they're watching you and they're going to do everything that you do, good, bad, and ugly. And so that was always her challenge to make sure, not just with my kids, but with anybody, we're here with our whole face. And I love that challenge. Like, listen, make eye contact, have good conversations, ask follow-up questions. And so her releasing me of so many things and helping me with so many things allowed me to grieve her loss even before she was gone some, right? Which not many people get to do. And I'm so grateful for that. So we got to grieve the life we thought we were going to have together. And so then when she died, it was like, man, I'm in dad mode, and it's 3 little kids grieving differently, having different emotions at different times, handling it differently. And so I'm trying to navigate that as well as all of my family and her friends and all the people that loved her so well. And everybody's grieving differently. And just doing the best I can to juggle everybody else's that I don't even think about mine until like year 2. Like after that first year, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know that I fully got to do this. And that's actually when I really dove into writing my book because that became my therapy. That became an outlet for me. I didn't know if it was going to be a book. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. It would just the writing for me became such a tool to heal. I did some therapy. Some are deep in therapy, some aren't. There's no right or wrong. But for me, writing became that, and still is that to this day. Um, did I do it perfectly? No. Does anybody know? There's no blueprint on how to do it or how quick to do it or how the goal is not to get over it. The goal is not to move on. I tell this all the time to people. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she's about 4 years out of losing her husband, and she said it still stings just as bad. And I said, you need to embrace the sting. It should sting. If I die and it doesn't sting for anybody, what kind of life did I live?
Mm.
Right? It better sting for somebody. And so embrace that. It's okay that it stings. I mean, like our person deserves a sting, man. They were such good people. They loved so well. And the fact that they're not here just shows that big hole that we're missing and the love that we're missing. And so let it sting, embrace the sting, but also understand there's hope and beauty and love and everything else on the other side of it. And I think that anyone that's lost someone um, should feel permission to embrace this thing, but also to be okay. That it's okay to be okay, and that's all our person would want for us.
Yeah, that's so good. I've heard it, I've heard it once said that grief is kind of like a shaken soda can, where like you let out, if you were to open a soda can, you just hear the little fizzes as
Yeah,
you slowly open it. And it's because if you were to open it all at once, it would just like explode.
yeah,
But God is
yeah.
kind enough to give us a process like grief that lets us let out the emotions pieces and bits at a time in order to
Yeah.
preserve what's left of us. But truly, like, when I just reflect on your story and um, your kids, and my heart just like breaks. It just really,
Mm.
really does break and grieve. And it's just hard to, I want to ask though, what does it look like to be a good friend to someone who
Mm.
is in the midst of
Yeah.
grief. I feel like I've had a lot of people, we were kind of talking before this, that are walking through seasons of deep grief.
Yeah, man.
And it's hard to know exactly what they need or what it looks like to be present for them. But what does that look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I think it starts even before the grief. It starts at the diagnosis. It starts at the loss of a job. It starts at the first day of the divorce. It starts at the day of the loss of a child. It starts before the real hard starts, right? Like how can you show up for someone who lost their job? How can you show up for someone who just went through a divorce? How can you show up for someone, whatever that thing may be, right? And the answer is just to show up in one way, shape, or form, not to ask for permission, not to try to do it perfectly, not to dot your I's and cross your T's, because and not to ask what they need, because the answer is I don't know or nothing. When I needed so much, but if anyone asks me, I'm good. I'm good. Because I don't want to burden you. I don't you just need to do. You just need to show up. And I was sharing a story on a live that I did the other day. When Rachel first got diagnosed, the thing that was most memorable to me, and so many people did so many things, and so don't be offended if I don't pick your thing. But the thing to me that was most impactful is someone got us a photo shoot, a family photo session. Um, and at the time, it didn't mean a ton. That was the last time Rachel had hair. That was the last time she felt like pretty. She felt like her, right? She was beautiful with bald head. She had the most beautiful bald head there ever was. But for her, that was it, right? That was the last time we were normal. We were complete, right? And I remember, I mean, those pictures are all over my house and always will be because that was the last time we were what we were. That was pre chemo. And I'm just so grateful that a family showed up and did that for us. Didn't ask about it. They lived in Florida. They found a photographer in Nebraska and made it happen. And I'm like, man, that's showing up. That they didn't ask anything. Like the photographer reached out to us and said, you've been gifted this. When would you like to? That's showing up. That's just doing. Don't ask for permission, just do. And then after, a season, so if you're then going through it, on once you lose someone, it's the same thing. It's for us it was the gift cards. It was the Uber Eats. It was the people that would just show up and say, "Hey, I'm gonna grab your kids for a minute. You just go. I'm gonna come sit. I'm gonna sit with you." And that can mean you can go nap. That can mean you can sit out here with me. That can mean we can go do something. But I'm just gonna come. I'm just gonna be. And again, not asking for permission and not expecting a huge response because I can't tell you how many people did stuff for me. And I'm a big gratitude person. Like gratitude is so important, but I can't tell you how many people did things for me that I probably didn't appreciate enough or say thank you to because I was just in this state of just surviving. I don't know who sent this. I don't know who sent that. I don't know who. So you're not doing it looking for recognition or looking for a tag in a post or looking whatever it may be. You're doing it because that's what love does. Love shows up for people. You're doing it because that's what you want to do, not because you feel obligated to do it, because that's what you want to do. And so whatever that thing is for you, do it. What would you want in that time? Was it taking care of the lawn? Was it someone to come clean the house? Was it what is that thing? And for me, it was all those things. I needed help with all those things. So anyone that would just show up and do or hire a cleaner or whatever it may be, was so big, and it took a burden off of me. And so the one thing I will say, don't ask what you can do because they don't know, and it's everything. You can do everything, right? For me, the one thing I didn't want was casseroles. We don't eat casseroles. And so if you go make a casserole, my kids don't eat it, I don't eat it. We just have a freezer full of casseroles. So if I ever write another book, it'll probably be say no to casseroles because that's not what was good about. Now, some families may love that. For us, it was a hard no. But man, get me some Uber Eats. Get me something where I can decide when and what we want. That was one of those that went a long way. But again, showing up, just showing up in one way, shape, or form. Even if you live a million miles away, you can show up through a gift card. You can show up through a handwritten note. You can show up through whatever it may be. Um, don't ask, just do.
Okay, well, I have your book right here. And of course, you keep saying just do. And so I have to just bring it out really quick because, of course, it says just do right on the front. But I haven't read all of it, but I have underlined a fair bit. But one that's just, you're speaking right to it. You say just being there is the most important place we can be. And I
Mm,
think that's such a simple statement, but something that's so easy to lose track of because sometimes
yeah,
we redefine what being there looks like. And like you said, it can just be like, well, I'm here, but I'm completely mentally absent,
yeah,
emotionally absent, scrolling on my phone. Um, and I would imagine sometimes even grief looks like kind of like mind numbing or checking out, or having a place to just have your own space and reset. But with a household full of kids, what did that look like for you? I know you talk about sometimes like it's actually the quantity of
yeah,
time instead of the quality, but the quality will come in that with the
yeah,
quantity. But how did you do that in the times when you just needed to like reset, or attempt to just scroll and escape on your phone?
yeah.
What did that look like for you?
That's so good, man. I had my closet. That was my retreat. So we, man, we before Rachel got sick, we spent a season living in a motorhome and traveling around the country. And and I wrote about that in the book, obviously, because that taught me presence, that taught me perspective, that taught me what really mattered. Because I was so focused on providing and working and hustling and just doing right that I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father. I just wasn't there, right? And Rachel never allowed me to not be the hero, which I so appreciate. She allowed me to be Superman to my kids. She allowed me to be always the hero, and I didn't deserve it. And I'm so grateful that she allowed me to be that. One of the hardest things that I've struggled with in losing her is having to be bad cop because I Rachel would always be bad. I had to be bad cop and good cop now, and it's really a struggle. And my kids take advantage of me. But the RV season taught us to just live together, right? And so Rachel, passed away a year after, pretty much a year after that. But we never went away from living together. So we were on top of each other. Even and now we went from 40 feet to a big old house. And everyone had their own room, but we didn't use them. We were always on top of each other. It was a really kind of a cool thing. And to this day, we still kind of are. The kids slept in my room for 3 years after Rachel died. I'd set up a pallet every single night and they would come and I'll sleep there. And at first I fought it, and then I realized that's where they're safe. That's where they want to be. And as long as I can allow my kids to feel safe, I'm going to do that. But so escaping was hard. It was hard for me to have my time, but I would find my closet became my space, and I would just go in there for 10 minutes and disappear, and have a cry or have a minute or whatever it may be, and always be found soon after. And then we're all in my closet and we're all hanging out, and some of us are crying and some of us are laughing or whatever it may be. But that became my thing, and it was good. It was enough. And then once the kids went back to school, I had time, I had space, I could breathe. And man, even writing my book, there were some chapters where I would just be bawling in my office as I'm doing this, and just like I don't, man, this is stuff I haven't talked about. This is difficult. But on the other end of it, it's just so much hope, so much beauty. And I think any time that I became super down or super woe is me or how's this going to happen, I looked to the cross and I realized that there's so much hope in what's next. And Rachel, you know, she went to her grave with that statement that, to the cross. I'll look to the cross. I'll look to the cross. And if the day Jesus died could be called good because of what happened a few days later, then of course, Rachel passing away can be called good too, because there's so much beauty on the other side of it.
Mm. How has your faith, been impacted or changed
Hmm.
having such a deep loss?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how people have hope without Jesus. And so I think one of the hardest things in the hospital for me to grasp was Rachel's room was different, and everybody knew that. And every time the nurses would come in, they're like, "Who got her?" And her was Rachel. Everybody knew who her was because everybody wanted to be in that room because it felt different. Because there was hope in that room. Because even though everybody knew she was dying, there was so much hope because of what was next. And I think what was so sad to me is that why was it just her room? why wasn't there more rooms in that hospital? That they would say who's got her, who's got him, but there wasn't, and it was neat that our room was the room, but at the same time, I don't know how people do it, Grace, without the
Yeah.
hope of what's next. And so I just have to lean into that. I have to lean into the fact that man, this is temporary. And Rachel won. You know, the life that she had here was great, but the life that she's got now is so much greater and so much more beautiful. And she won. She won the race. And it's impossible for me not to be excited about that opportunity or that and excited in that hope one day. Um, but I want to be here for a while because Rachel told me I need to be here for a while, and I wanna give the kids the best life I can for as long as I can. But if the good Lord wants to take me, you know, I'm ready whenever that may be.
Yeah, that'll be a sweet reunion someday.
Hmm.
You talk about like hope filling that space, where probably in most rooms that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Um, but it's clear that grief can coexist with hope and with
Hmm.
um, even joy.
Yeah.
But how do you grasp that as someone in the midst of it all? That, okay, right now I just
Mm.
feel fully in midst in grief. How do you process the fact that it's okay, one, to feel hope and to feel joy, but to realize that that's coming too?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I can tell you right now, I would not have handled it like Rachel did. I can tell you there's no way I would have um there's no way I would have shared such a joyful moment with anyone that walked into the room to say bye to me. There's just no way. There's no way I would have wanted visitors even, I think, at some point. There's no way I would have had literally the janitor walking by and hollering at him to come in and give her a hug. And there's no there's no world where I would have been the Rachel. And so the fact that I got to have a front row seat to watch the way not only she lived for the 10 years we were together, but the way she eventually died. Um, she filled us all with hope. She gave us all permission to be okay. She gave us all joy. And today I'd be different than I was then for sure. Because she gave me permission to be joyful and even in the hardest seasons, even in the ugliest seasons. Um, Also, it's okay to be sad and it's okay to hurt. And but on the other side of that, there's just hope and there's joy and there's beauty. And Rachel taught me that in a really, really, really hard season of our lives. And so I'd be doing her a disservice and my kids a disservice to just be stuck and hard and ugly and again, it's okay if you are. It's okay if you are, because I think had it been the other way around, you know, I don't know that I would have given Rachel all this permission to be happy and be joyful. And it's the fact that I had it made it so much easier. But again, all of it turns back to the hope in everlasting life, the hope in, the eternity. And again, if we don't have that, I don't know where the hope is. So the fact that we have that and, you know, in our family and Rachel's story is a joyful thing.
Yeah. So if someone might be in the thick of it, maybe it's just like a fresh wound, something that you're walking through right
Mm.
now. Maybe it's that first thing is just look to the cross. And I,
Yeah.
I feel like there's been times where, and no matter what grief looks like, if it's you're grieving you didn't make the team, or you didn't get into the college you
Mm.
wanted, or life just looks different than you thought it would be. I think grief can come in every sort of capacity.
Yeah.
But maybe the first step is looking to the cross. And sometimes though, I've been in seasons where I've been told like, oh, well, like Jesus, like hold on to Jesus. And I love that and I hear that, but sometimes I don't receive that in that time. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I've
For
heard that.
sure.
Like that is not
Yeah.
what I need to hear right now, even though
Yeah.
it's exactly what I need to hear. But sometimes I think it takes like turning
Wow.
and looking to the cross until we receive that posture. And I'm in a season where I'm running a lot because I'm training for a marathon. So this is what's relevant to me right now.
Yeah.
But there are times where runs are just hard, even though it might be a 3 mile. And the other day I did a 20 mile, and the 3 mile is harder than the 20 mile just
Yeah.
because running's hard, but sometimes you have to flip your palms until you find the praise.
Yeah,
And I've learned that in the thick of like life, like the posture I've learned in running has seeped into so many parts of my life. But when someone tells me look to the cross in a time when I don't feel like I can hear
I
that,
get it for
yeah,
sure. No, that is so good because I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want like for sure. And so for me, I well, I think I might have shared this at the Oaks, but I remember so it was February 29th. It was a leap year. And I remember praying that day that Rachel would die on February 29th because I didn't want to relive the day of her dying every year. I thought, okay, oh, every 4 years would be better. Or saying, Lord, please take her. And then I remember feeling so um, I don't know if it was selfish or just bad for praying for her to die because I hadn't done that. I'd prayed for her to be healed. And this, for the first time ever, I'm like, hey, take her instead of make her better, right? And I remember feeling so bad for that prayer. And of course, the Lord didn't answer that prayer the way I wanted it to be answered. He heard it, he listened, and he did answer it, but it wasn't the way I wanted it to be. And I look at it now and I'm so grateful that I have March 1st every year and that the kids have March at 1st every year and that we get to celebrate Rachel's homecoming every year. And if not, February 29th doesn't happen and it'd be weird. And when do you celebrate mommy on the 28th or the 1st or like and so like as much as I thought at the time that's exactly what I needed or making the teams exactly what we needed or this is exactly what we needed. Um it's the last thing I needed. It's the freaking last thing I needed. And so I'm grateful that he knew what I didn't know and that he saw what I didn't see. And as much as I thought that's the perfect scenario in that moment, what an idiot I am. And we think about all the things that we prayed for and all the things that we thought we needed or we thought we wanted or we couldn't understand, whether it was the job loss or the loss of a person or the loss of a relationship or whatever it may be. And you look at back at it now, you're like, man, of course that's what I needed because of look where I'm at today. Of course I didn't make that team because I was supposed to go here. Of course that relationship didn't work because I was supposed to meet this person. Of all the things that we prayed for. I mean, I tell you, Grace, thousands and thousands of unanswered prayers have been good for me, right? And at the time, I'm not sure. I mean, even gosh, when right before Rachel got sick, I was a part of a company that crashed, and I was one of the leaders of the company. We were doing really well, and then it just crashed. And it calls me to go get a real job, I'll say, like a real job with real insurance and things like that. And at the time, I was so angry at God. I'm like, God, why'd you do this? I put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this. This was my thing, and I worked so hard, and then you just took it all away from me. That doesn't make any sense to me. Little did I know, like we were about to enter a season where I needed stability, and I needed insurance, and I needed like things that you don't think about till you need them. And like again, just another like we don't know what we don't know. We
mm,
don't know what we don't know. So sometimes maybe it's not turning to the cross. Maybe that's not what that person needs to hear. But it's just the idea of, man, think about all the things we prayed for and all the things that didn't make sense in our lives. And looking back at them now and being like, man, I didn't know. I'm so glad he knows what I don't know and sees what I don't see and does what I can't do, because he hasn't messed up yet.
yeah. Yeah, it's so good. It always reminds me of John 13:7 of like, you don't understand what I'm doing now, but someday you'll see.
Mm,
And like
mhm.
all things he works together for our good
Yeah,
and for our purpose, like all things, not like he's not going to leave one or two things out, like
yeah,
literally all things. And I mean, in this unbelievable loss, like your impact, I think, has just multiplied. And that's like watching as an outsider, just seeing the amount of people that you reach, whether it be through socials or through your kids or through the way that Rachel loved, you're loving people in that way.
mm,
And it's spreading so clearly. I want to talk a little bit really quickly before we wrap up, just about where life is now for you, for
mm,
the people that are at the beginning stages of their journey of healing and
yeah,
grief and life. Um, but there is life after. There is
yeah,
life after. So what's life look like for you now?
yeah. So life is good. We were talking before we started. Professionally, life is great. We started another company. We help people publish their stories and tell their stories and get their words to the world, and that's been so much fun. So we're doing that, and I've partnered with three incredible humans that I get to do day-to-day work with. And I told them today on a call, I'm like, do we really get to do this? Is this really what we're doing right now? And at the same time, I told you I have to be done at 2:30 because at 2:30 the kids come home and I don't work after 2:30 because that's I need to be there with my whole face. Am I perfect? No. Do I mess up? Absolutely. But have I gotten better and do I remind myself often? And I've given my kids permission to remind myself or remind me, absolutely. Daddy, be here, be with us. And so we're doing good. The kids are so happy. The kids have so much joy. One of my proudest moments this year was going to two of the kids' parent teacher conferences, and both teachers, different teachers of different kids, saying, I've never met a happier kid, never
Mm.
had a happier kid. And to me, like, come on, man, that that's beautiful. That's awesome. They have joy. And are there hard days? For sure. Do we miss mommy? Yes. Do we talk about mommy every day? Absolutely. But most of it's just joyful, great memories of mommy, right? So that the season of just being dad and doing all the things and trying to navigate tween girls and the things that come with that is an adventure in and of itself. But doing the best I can. Relationally, it's hard to date after a loss. It's when you don't plan to date again. Like when I was dating, we didn't have dating apps. That wasn't a thing we did, right? I'm old. And I haven't downloaded them, nor will I anytime soon. But I've dated a few people, and it hasn't worked out, and that's okay. You know, that's probably a whole nother podcast for another time, but super happy exactly where I am right now. And it's a really beautiful season, and I couldn't be in a better place today than I am. And I'm just enjoying every moment of it.
So good. Well, that's so clear. And I'm sure I've always thought of like each person as like this huge kind of lump of clay, and it's kind of points to a C.S. Lewis quote of like he's making us into a home that the Lord plans to
Mm,
come and live in himself. But like everything that happens to us throughout life is like another chisel that the Lord
mm.
is kind of creating us and shaping us and making us. And the hardest things that we walk through like are the very things that will make and shape us. But I
Yeah.
imagine a loss like that's like a huge chunk and it just hurts in the time. But like if you step back 10 years later, it's like, wow, Lord, you really did make and shape that into something
Mm,
like
yeah.
holy. That could only happen through something like that. I do
Yeah.
want to touch on your book really fast. I think people need to pick this up. Where can they do that?
So just do, yeah, you can come to my Instagram. I'm the only Brandon Janous, Janous that there is. And there's a link there. It's on Amazon. So just do Brandon Janous. Guys, it's rough. It's not polished. I didn't want it to be polished because life is not perfect. It's imperfectly perfect. And I chose not to get it edited. So it's a light edit. There's probably some misspellings. There's pro for sure some grammar. But it's like being in that hospital room with us. It's ugly and it's hard sometimes, but it's also beautiful. It's like being in that RV with us. It's ugly and it's hard sometimes, but man, was it fun. And so I just kind of invited you into our lives. And um, it's such an easy read, but it's also not heavy like you might think it might be. It's learning stories about life and love and happiness and perspective and purpose and being there. Um, Presence. It's learning if from my kids, from a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and watching them do life and just being present. And it's a fun read, and I think you'll enjoy it. So go grab a copy. Hit me up. I'll sign you one if you want me to, or the kids will sign it. Actually, is how I like to do it. I like to have the
I
kids
love
sign
that.
them. And thank you, Grace, for allowing me this space to talk about Rachel because it's my favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's clear, and I think tons of people love hearing about it, including myself. But this book is rich. This conversation, I feel like my cup is filled. And I'm so excited for people to maybe be blessed by it who are in the thick of it and don't know where to go from here. And maybe this book is just that lighthearted, fun read that also kind of points you towards hope and to the cross, even when you don't feel like you need it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Brandon. You're awesome. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Grace. Appreciate you rooting you on like crazy. And go get Grace's book. If you don't have Grace's book, go get Grace's book. Shameless plug for Grace. So thank you,
Thanks,
friend.
Brandon. Thank you.